So I'd like to talk through Matthew Jones's paper, What We Talk About When We Talk About Big Data. It's from the Journal of Strategic Information Systems, 2019. So the paper asks what we talk about when we talk about big data, and it considers datafication, which is basically everything becoming data. The work makes us question what we mean by data and really looks at assumptions. Whilst focus is on big data, I think the work can apply to any data you might have, and some of the insights are really interesting for your research. So what is data? Data are described as simple observations around the state of the world. They are often numbers, characters, images, could be text, but they represent properties of an object or events and their environments. Data are references, the assumption that they correspond to a sufficient degree to that state of the world. All data are treated equal, at least when you start using computer processors, doing analysis, even in vivo and your textual data. All that data is considered to be equally valid. And data are often described as being natural, that they've got some external existence, that data are out there in the world, you've collected it in. But that means you've adopted a realist, ontological position. Positivism has been adopted. There's a lot of assumptions suddenly put into your academic work when you start to perceive data in this way. From data, we can build wisdom. So data is presented as foundational in this knowledge pyramid. It's the bedrock of wisdom. If you consider even the word data mining, it's as though it's a solid thing that we go out and get. So data is underpinning the hierarchy. Data here is sitting on top of the world, and then from that we have information, knowledge, and wisdom. So it's supporting learning. So data is often described as raw data, and it's the facts that describe a phenomenon. So consider some of the language being used there for data. So big data, everything is or potentially will become data. So size here is seen as a significant distinguishing feature of big data. There's an idea we can render into data all the world, all the things that have never before been quantified, the social, the organizational, all become visible and we can analyze them. Datafication of everything gives us N is all. So everything we want is data, is available in data. And there's a quote, "When we have enough data, the numbers will speak for themselves." Data is not a natural phenomenon. The data you record does not necessarily correspond to the state of the world. When you record a piece of data, it may not be accurate or valid, and it most often doesn't come with some form of error bar on it, particularly when you think about qualitative data. Data is often a construct. If we consider blood pressure measurement, it's measured in millimeters of mercury. It's a construct as the distance mercury rises up a tube from the air pressure of inflating a cuff around the arm. So we can see in the picture that the inflatable cuff that is pumped up with a little ball there, you pump it up, and the pressure in the cuff when it's inflated and stops the blood pressure in the arm drives the mercury up a tube. Now this is therefore, it's not actually blood pressure itself, it is a proxy measurement of actual blood pressure. It's constructed. Now the measurement device, you may not even see one of these things. It may be measured digitally with no mercury present. There's the device. I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce its name. The data represents the measure in a moment, and in that moment in context. And then, so we take, in this example, blood pressure, and we compare that to a given normal. So we've already prejudged what we expect blood pressure to be, and we are analyzing that against a normal, what we expect it to be and what it is, and we make that comparison and make a judgment on it. So data emerge after someone with knowledge decides what they should be. Somebody has decided what the measurement should be. Even in this device, they've put a scale and they say, well, you know, its maximum is going to be around 200 and something. Its minimum is going to be around 20. We expect, you know, for this device to function accurately, it to be within these scales. So it's all prejudged. So this idea of raw data starts to fall down because, as the quote says, data are already cooked and are never entirely raw. It's always been thought through beforehand. All knowledge is conjecture. People assume data are facts, that they represent truth and certainty, but if we go back and consider, you know, Michael Crotty's book, particularly the element on positivism of Karl Popper, you know, every scientific statement must remain tentative forever. Fake data is data nonetheless, just like fake news is still news. Data may not be empirical, so it cannot be judged on its truth. Computationally, all data are equal, but data are not generic. Your interpretation is influenced by knowledge about who recorded that. So how much faith have you got in the data? Datification of the world tends towards phenomena that are readily amenable to quantification. So we tend to measure what's easy to measure, and we don't measure those things that are more difficult to measure. So databases are skewed, they're sexist, they're racist, they're classist. The Facebook user base is skewed towards particular socio-economic and age groups of those people that like using Facebook. So any insights we gain from such data is poor, even by the populations that, you know, that particular thing is targeted towards, because it's not fully inclusive. The data you use is the data that you choose. Now, Jones brings up a dyad here. He says that data in principle presents the record. So that's the data that is available, or the data that is there, or the data that's been collected. It's not necessarily accessible to you or useful to you. And that data, the full record that's available, is the data in principle. Now, there's also the data in practice, and that is the data that is accessible to you and you can make use of. Now, that is a small subset of the data in principle. He then says that data are performative. So the data themselves shape the conditions of their own use. The data selected creates an understanding of the phenomenon that is taken to describe. If you'd chosen other data, it would describe the phenomenon differently. So the data itself provides you with the understanding of the thing you're looking at, yet you've chosen that data. You've selected a particular lens. And in that selection, all other data remains inconsequential, even though the data that you've chosen may be erroneous. When we choose data, we actually use the data that we can afford to access. So n does not equal all. The set of data that we would want to use, is very limited. It's limited by what we can afford to access. If we wanted more data, obviously we would do more surveys, we would do more interviews, but we're limited by that affordability. So available data traces become the effective reality, despite how wrong or biased they may be. So the whole message of Jones's paper is for you to be critical, for you to be cautious, and for you to really think about, well, what does that data mean? How is it captured? What's it really telling me about the world? Before we go making claims, so we can really consider more deeply the assumptions that we have embedded in our analysis. So those are my thoughts on the Matthew Jones paper. I really enjoyed reading it. I thought it was very insightful, and there's a lot more in that paper. This is just my view of it. So do go and read it. Please also like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That really helps. Do follow, the YouTube address is there. And if you'd like to talk, do get in touch. If you'd like to make videos yourself and share them via this channel, that would be great. Again, do get in touch.